Welcome back to my next playthrough series. This time we're heading on into Star Realms Frontiers, which is a standalone game, and it has a really cool solo mode or co-op mode that you can play, and we're going to be doing that. And I've also got just the base game, kind of the little box. I don't have the advanced version that has the board and everything. You don't really need that. So what we're going to take a look at is we're going to look in the book at, we're going to be playing against the Automatons, solo, true solo, one-handed, and they have themselves a card, and we'll take a closer look at this as to how the solo play works. And then we'll get into some gameplay, and yes, I'm using some of the Aeon's End markers for keeping track of hit points, just a lot easier than the cards they give you in the game. So let's take a little look at the Automatons and what they're all about. But I guess I should explain a little bit about Star Realms. It is a deck building game. And you start out with 8 sort of purchase power scout cards and 2 Viper attack cards in your hand. The gist of the game is we are trying to defeat well, in this case, the Automatons. They have a total health of 30. We're going to get into the rules of how they work, and we start with a health of 60. And so we're going to be trying our best to defeat the Automatons first. And so yeah, it is a deck builder, I should have mentioned that. But Star Realms has been out for quite a long time. It's quite a fun little 2-player deck builder. I think it's up to multiplayer now. And then they have the solo co-op version up to 4 players as well. So it's actually pretty cool. Alright, let's take a look at the Automatons now that I've explained kind of what the game is. And here you go. And yes, you always can purchase Explorers. Purchase prices in the upper right. We'll get into all this as we play. And it's a little more complicated with the solo variant because there's a whole bunch of things you need to do depending. Oh, and there are 8 different solo enemies, co-op enemies to play against in the box in the Star Realms Frontiers. So that's actually quite a lot of variety. And I'll just quickly flash the rest of them. So you've got the Blob, you've got the Dimensional Horror, the Madness of the Machine, the Nemesis Beast, Pirates of Darkstar, Defy the Empire, and the Cost of Freedom. So lots and lots of things, variety, co-op or solo. Alright, let's take a look at Automatons. Alright, so the rule book here, it's got all of the 8 different solo co-op. This says, of course, 1 to 4 player solo co-op challenge. So they're challenges that you've got to try to beat. They're actually pretty neat. So let's take a look at the Automatons. I don't think I'm going to read through all of the flavor text. You can pause the video, have a read of that if you want. It gives you the backstory of what the Automatons are all about. It's going to take about 5 minutes for you to read it. But the challenge setup, have a way to track the assimilation count. I'll be using dice. The assimilation count represents a growing alien armada as they assimilate more and more captured technology. The boss starts the game with 30 authority, or hit points if you want to call it that, per player. So we're playing solo, they get just 30. And the assimilation count of 0 plus 4 for each additional player beyond the first. So they're going to start with a count of 0. It tells you, for example, note the boss has no hand, deck, or discard pile at all. Each player starts with a standard deck of 8 scouts and 2 vipers, and I showed you that quickly. And players start with 60 authority each when player with more than 1 players are a Hydra team. So we're playing complete solo. So the boss order of play, after the boss plays its cards, see the Automaton challenge card. When we'll look at that here in a second. Then once they play all their cards, you do everything you need to do, and then you do this you use the primary ability of bases. Anyway, I'm not going to read through all that, but we'll show you how that works as we play the game. So it tells you how they do things. I know, a little bit confusing, but it won't be once we start playing. We'll probably do a turn or 2 here in the first episode after we explain all this. Alright, let's take a look at the Automatons themselves and how they actually operate. Alright, so the Automaton's card itself, as you can see here, it says 30 authority per player. It says on its turn, the boss plays the top card of the trade deck. Then if the total cost of the cards it played that turn is lower than the assimilation count, it plays the next card off the top of the trade deck. It'll continue to do this process until the total cost of the cards played is equal to or greater than the assimilation count. After the boss attacks, add 1 to the assimilation count. So we're going to look at the back of the card now and see what we're supposed to do on actually specific cards. And this looks like a lot of instructions, but once you play it a couple of times, it kind of makes sense. So the boss never uses trash abilities, and some cards have these symbols on them with little trash can ability. So if the boss never uses that, the boss, if it could scrap a card in its hand or discard style, instead each player must put a Scout or Viper from their hand or discard pile on top of their deck. And when the boss would scrap a card in the trade row, it always scraps the most expensive card, in case of ties, closest to the trade deck. And the boss has no hand, deck, or discard pile. If the boss would draw a card, it gains 3 attack instead. If the boss would be force, if the player would force the boss to discard a card, the player gains 3 attack instead. If a card would go to the boss's hand, discard, or deck pile, put it in the scrap heap instead. If a boss would gain trade, it gets that much combat instead. It will all make sense when we play. If the boss would acquire a card for free, it gains 6 attack instead. If the boss makes a player discard cards, each other player must also discard the number of cards, but we're playing solo, so just be 1. And if the boss has a choice of which resource to gain, it will choose combat first, authority second, and trade, which will then become combat third. So that's how it all works. It's back to camera out. We're going to set up 5 cards in the purchase row, and we'll do a turn or 2 to see how this works. Alright, so we're kind of set up here. There's a couple of other little things to take a look at. There are 4 different challenge levels, challenge difficulty levels. Hope that's not too shiny. So for beginners, players take 3 turns each before the boss's first turn. Or if you want to play intermediate, players take 2 turns each before the boss's first turn. If you want to play veteran, we just go first, and then the boss goes. And if you want to be expert, the boss goes first. I think we're just going to do veteran, which just means we're going to go first, then the boss, and just back and forth. Away we go until one of us loses. So let's hope it's the Automatons that lose. All right, and the first player in a standard Star Realms game, we'll shuffle this up. And of course I didn't draw we'll draw the deck here in a second, the 5 cards. You normally draw a hand of 5 cards, but on the very first turn it's 3. So we're just going to be drawing 3 cards for our first turn. I'm going to move the counter over there. And the 3 cards we'll have is just 3 recruit. Now, what are we going to do with the 3 recruit? Well, let's find out, because we have this ginormous deck. And the reason this deck is so big is because it's the base game plus Frontiers. I've shuffled everything together as best I can. So maybe we'll just split the deck here a little bit. So, I mean, I shuffled it all. It's very hard to shuffle that many cards. So there you go. So 5 cards are going to be in the trade row. We have a Burrower, and again, so you have a primary ability, and then you also have a synergy ability, if you want to call it that. If you have the same faction and you play cards down, they trigger each other. So we have 1 card we can purchase, and it costs 3. And then we have, and these are all different factions. There's 4 different factions in the game. I think that's Trade Federation, Blobs, I don't remember, and Imperial. Oh, Imperials, I think, are the yellows, so that's 3. And again, we'll look a little bit closer at these cards, and then you have bases, which are cool. When you play a base, it comes out and it stays out until it is either destroyed. And I should say there are 2 kinds of bases. There are the ones with the solid silver shield, which means you can attack the player, and you can avoid attacking the base if you don't want to. And then there are bases that have, says outpost on them. Outposts, you must attack them first. So here's a Frontier Runner. All right, there is our cards. So closest to this deck here, for purposes of what the boss does, is right here. All right, so to start off very quickly, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to do all of this. So this is our draw deck. I might get a little bit organized or disorganized here. So we basically have 3 recruits. So we're going to play our 3 recruit. And what do we want for 3? We can get a 2 and a 1, and these get replaced immediately. Blobs generally do a lot of damage, and then the Trade Federation generally gives you quite a bit of health. And I think for 3, I think we're going to get the Orbital Shuttle. When we play this card, of course, it's going to go in our discard, it'll get shuffled and drawn out later. We're going to get 3 recruit points for that, and if you have 2 or more bases in play, you gain 4 authority and draw a card. Probably not going to be happening, so I guess we'll put, try to get organized, put my discard here, and this gets immediately replaced with another Blob Fighter. So If you want to, the best thing to try to do is to get synergies between the factions, because if you play two cards with the same faction, then they trigger each other. So these guys, if you played them together in your hand, would both draw cards. Not only would you get 8 attack, you'd draw 2 extra cards. We still have 1 recruit remaining, but I think we're going to stick with the same faction for now. We're going to get the Frontier Runner. This is going to give us 2 recruit points and 2 authority when we play it. So a discard pile, and that's basically it. We replace it like such with a battle mech. That's it. The mechanoids or mechs have their own faction, red faction, and that's it. And then we discard our cards. And for our next hand, then we would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. All right, and this will be our hand for next turn. So we got our 2 attack and we have 3 recruit. All right. And then, because we're doing veteran, now the boss goes. If we weren't doing veteran, then we would get to go again before the boss. But the boss goes. So how does the boss operate? Well, the boss, I'm going to use dice over here to keep track of their authority. Right now they have 0. So they're just going to play whatever this card is, and that's all they're going to play because it is worth 4. All right, so it is a base. So let's figure out exactly what we do with a base. So they can either get 2 authority or 2 recruit points. Remember, their recruit points turn into attack. So we're just going to double check what they're going to do. And these are little Scrabble things I'm using. So double check the rule book and see what we do, and they draw a base. Okay, so consulting the back of the card, we go all the way down to the bottom because they are basically playing this card. It's a 4 cost. Of course, they have 0, so they're just going to play this 1 card. That's going to be their turn, and it's going to go into the trash or scrap heap. So we're going to go right to the bottom here. It says, if the boss has a choice of which resource to gain, it will choose combat first. Well, there's no combat on this card, and they never trash cards. That's the very first thing. So they have authority or recruitment points. So the combat first, authority second, and trade, which will then become combat third. So they're going to actually pick authority in this instance. So what do we do with authority? Well, on this card it says they gain 2 authority. So boom, this goes to the trash heap. And our enemy, the Automatons, just got stronger. They're now at 32. And yes, I'm using Aeon's End trackers. They're just very easy to go after health. And that's the boss's turn. Let's have one more turn for ourselves before we wrap up today. So, and how does it work? Well, that's our discard pile. I'm getting messed up already. I'm going to have to figure out how to do this a little bit better in the next video. So this is our hand. We have basically 3 authority and we have 2 attack. Well, with the 2 attack, it's pretty obvious we're going to hit the Automatons for 2 damage. And then we have 3 authority to purchase with. So they just got their 2, and we just took it away from them down to 30. Okay, and we have 3 authority. And remember, we already have blue in our discard pile. So if we want to have a lot of synergies going, and as you can see, we have no blue. So we have 3 battle mech cost 5, the swarm cluster 8. We've got 2 for the cargo craft. And then we've got 3 and 4. You know, I think we're just going to go ahead and get the burrower for 3. That's going to do a lot of damage. 5. The more damage we can do to the automatons before they can ramp up, probably the better. So we'll take that. For 3, it gets replaced like such with a base. Fleet headquarters, whenever you play a ship, gain 1 attack. Wow. But you got to get 8 authority or 8 recruit to buy it. And that's basically our hand. Everything done. Boom. And we're going to be drawing 5 more. So 2. We've got, of course, a couple more basic cards. And I got to shuffle this behind my back here so I don't knock the camera over. And we're going to see... Oh, and I should also mention, yeah, these are... Explorer cards are always available. They cost 2. They're worth 2 recruit. And then if you trash the card... or discard, it goes back to the pile. They never run out. You'll get 2 extra attack. We haven't done that yet. We've been buying actual cards. All right, 3 more to be 5. 1, 2, 3. And here we go. What's our hand for our next turn? Well, we have a Frontier Runner and 4 recruit. So as you can see, we're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to have 6 recruit next time. And we're going to get 2 health back, 2 authority. That's going to be our hand for the next turn. And I think that's going to be next episode. Now we're just going to do the boss turn. And I forgot, of course, what the boss gets at the end of his turn. He gets authority. So he's now sitting with 1 authority. Again, no card is worth a half. So He plays the top card off the deck, and he plays a supply bot. And it's worth 3, so this will be the only card he plays. 2 authority. So that basically means he's going to be getting 2 attack. You may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. Alright, when you want to scrap a card, oops, yeah, these are all going to be falling over. Apologize for that. I thought they would sit there a little bit better. So he's playing that card. Let's find out what happens when he scraps a card. Alright, found it. So they're going to get 2 attack because their trade turns into attack. You can scrap a card from your hand or discard pile. Alright, what do they do when they do that? The boss would scrap a card in his hand or discard pile. Instead, each player must put a scout or viper from their hand or discard pile on top of their deck if possible. So we basically have to take a viper or a scout and put it on top of our deck. Well, we're going to have to put a scout on top because we don't have any vipers. It's going to go back on top of our deck. And this is going to be our hand for next time. So now we have 2, 3, 4. We have 5 recruit. This will be a pretty short playthrough, I think. And this, of course, then gets discarded. And, oh, we did get hit for 2 as well. I don't want to forget about that. So we take 2 damage from that, as well as having to put that down. So instead of 60, we now have, if I can get this correctly, 58 health. Again, we go to 0 health. Of course, we lose the game. And it's the end of his turn, so his authority now is going to go to 2. And this is just going to keep going and going and going. And as you can see, the higher his authority, the more cards he's going to play, the more cards he's going to play, the more damage is going to happen to us. And that's the race. So thanks so much for watching along. Thanks for your comments, subscriptions, and likes. This is Star Realms Frontiers with the base game added in to the mix just for extra card and card variety. We're playing against the Automatons. A complete solo game, solo challenge. And we'll see if we can take them out. So thanks so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Continuation of Star Realms Frontiers against the Automatons. But of course, a correction here at the end of the episode. Why wouldn't there be? I've rearranged things a little bit better to my liking. And so, yes, bases get assimilated by the Automatons. They don't get trashed and discarded like the other cards. Now, we didn't have synergies because they played this card on their second turn, which is a machine faction, and this is the Trade Federation faction. So they didn't get the bonus on the bottom there, which is good. But they do, on their second turn, they will use the base again, and once again, they're going to get authority. So they will get back 2 more health, or they will gain 2 more authority, and that everything should be fixed. So thanks so much. See you tomorrow. The continuation of Star Realms Frontiers versus the Automaton.